Good evening, everybody. Adequate notice of this meeting, as required by the Open Public Meetings Act, was provided through the posting, mailing, and filing of the annual notice of regularly scheduled meetings of the Town Council on December 11th, 2019. The notice was, on that date, posted on the bulletin board of the municipal building, provided to the Westfield Leader and the Star Ledger, and filed with the clerk of the town of Westfield. Thank you all for joining us virtually tonight. Mrs. Rowley, may I have a roll call?
Mayor Brindle?
Here.
Council members Habagood?
Here.
Parmalee?
Here.
LaGrippo?
Here.
Katz?
Here.
Mackey?
Here.
Contract?
Here.
Jardia?
Here.
And Boyce.
Here.
All right, so I'm doing a change up. I know we don't have a flag, but I do think we all should try and find a looking flag and say the Pledge of Allegiance for the sake of order. So let's do it. Unmute your phones. All right, here we go. I pledge of allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic
which stands
one nation,
under God, indivisible,
Indivisible,
liberty,
and
justice.
justice.
All right. Very nice. Okay, so we're going to begin. I think Jim has a few updates.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. And thanks everyone for being on here. And thanks to the staff members that are on and the staff members that are not on video, but on the call as well. A couple quick updates of things that are actually still happening despite this this crisis. So Minnewaska Park, while the parks are closed, we do have work going on in Minnewaska. The pathway project started last week by installing the ADA ramps in the park. That still will continue this week. It started yesterday or today due to the very wet weather we had in the park, but they expect to be back there this week to continue the ADA compliant ramps, and then they'll be doing the pathways in the park. And as that wraps up in a number of weeks, they'll be following up with the roadway paving of Park Drive, and both of these projects were all paid for and budgeted in the 2018 budget. You remember we had a couple of different bids we had to go through multiple times. The great news is we have that project has begun, and actually, who would have thought it's a good time to do this project when the park is closed? So that's working out well. So that's continuing and going on good. Second, the mural. You remember last year we had the mural under the train bridge at South Avenue there. That we put the mural up last November. I think it was completed. That was all done with grant money. We have received our reimbursement from a state grant, as well as other monies. We have money in the bank now to do the second side of the mural. So Public Works employee, Supervisor Rich Eubanks is working with the artist and the company SCI Construction, who's offered their services to us to install the plywood, and then the mural will get going. So that's probably 2 or 3 weeks away from starting, based upon the artist schedule and getting the materials, but that will be something that will be very nice to be done. And again, that's paid for by grant money, which is in a separate account outside the budget, which is great. The work coffee kiosk continues. I know it's been a long time. The kiosk itself is actually done. What's taking a long time is utility work. Chris has been with C&G, Jersey American Water, New Jersey Transit. The great news is if you go out there today and look behind the fence, there is major holes in the ground. We have pipes being run all over the place to the kiosk. But once the utility work is done, we'll be able to do the installations on the inside and then go out to RFP for a vendor, which is great. But the major holdup has been the utility work, which now is underway and the digging is going on, which is great. And again, that was out of last year's capital budget as well. So that's money that was previously budgeted. Today, delineation study for Tamaqua Park started. Met with the vendors yesterday in the park to tell them show them the area that we're looking at as per RFP. Remember, this was a grant we received from the county to pay for half of this study to determine whether there's areas in Tamaqua Park that can be used for part of, used for other sports or buildings or anything out of our park master plan. So That is starting today. And actually today, the mayor was kindly met us at Tamaqua Park. Greg O'Neill and I, we were out there to see the Wetlands Delineation Company, but we're also out there to take a look at the fields. We had this unprecedented opportunity where the parks aren't being used. And so we took along a walk around all the fields at Tamaqua today. We saw the condition of all the fields. So we're actually going to try to do some aeration and seeding by Public Works at a very low cost for fields 1 and 2 in Tamaqua Park to see how that works. You know, when you're seeding and trying to repair a public facility, actually it's much different than throwing down seed in your backyard. So it requires a lot more work and effort, but we're going to try this on fields 1 and 2. We're going to start if we can this week. The good news about Tamaqua, unlike some of our other parks, Tamaqua Park drains very well. All the fields there drain very well. As a matter of fact, walking today, the mayor saw firsthand that obviously after a heavy rain yesterday, the fields there were actually very dry, whereas opposed to Memorial and Gumpert, for example, still standing water there. So that's something we're going to try. Start this week in Public Works, and if that works, we'll then have a plan. We can you know, do on other fields to go forward. So that was a nice visit today. Also about the parks. So the master plan, of course, we know was finalized last year. We have been getting some information now from our consultant. We asked him to look at next steps for us for RFPs, RFQs, or potential contracts with them if we chose to look at Edison School feasibility, which we discussed in the past, as well as Tamaqua Park Fieldhouse capabilities as well, which is contingent upon this delineation study. So this time frame we have now of no use might benefit us from this, in the sense of having delineation study done, might help guide us on what we can do at Tamaqua Park or other parks. So we're going to be meeting with the committee the mayor formed with the Joint Committee of Board of Education members, as well as Recreation Commission members, to look at some proposals we have received from Branstad or Carroll, and see what the next step will be to continue the master plan, parks plan for Tamaqua particularly, and also other park, Tamaqua. Drawing a blank, but so Edison School. See the feasibility study there. So that's all happening, and so there's a lot of things happening behind the scenes. The last big one is Conservation Center. Of course, we expect to open up this Thursday. We've had a overwhelming response online permitting wise. Right now, we've sold almost close to 500 permits online. So that's working very well. Thank you to the residents out there who are using that portal, and it's working very well. We're going to need all of your patience and all of your cooperation this week when we open up, and we're excited to do that. Unfortunately, I do want to say to the council members today, we did learn today we have 2 DPW employees who are now home self-quarantining today for potential exposure. Hopefully they'll be fine, but it's already affected our police department, as we previously reported. It's affected our fire department. It's affected our building department. Now today we learned that we have 2 DPW employees who are thankfully very much fine, but they are home self-quarantining now for 14 days to make sure they have no symptoms. So just another example of it's affecting everybody, not just the residents, but also the employees. But we're excited to open the center on Thursday. There'll be some changes for those that come to the center. I know I bought my permit. I'm very excited to use it, but of course I'm fully expecting to wait in line to get my decal. But I'm excited to drop off my grass as well. So it should be good. And again, I know there's been some discussion out there. We are opening up on Thursdays and Fridays right now. And the reason we didn't open on weekends, we have always relied upon a state grant to fund the weekend hours of the Conservation Center. With the state's financial situation, no different than any towns, we're unsure if we're going to get that money. So temporarily, we're actually suspending the weekend hours, but it's only temporary. We fully expect to restore those hours once we get a budget formalized in the next few weeks, and we will learn more information about whether the state can actually provide those funds to us. But again, big picture, almost 500 people already are eager to use the center for organic debris. And of course, once the center's open, the recycling opportunities that are available are open for free as well. So those are the main updates. But as you can see, Mayor, a lot of work is going on despite the pandemic. So.
Hey, Tim, can I ask a quick question? Jim, Councilman LaGrippo, just real quick. If we're going to have reduced hours, some residents have asked if we could reduce the fee back to last year's rate. So I don't know if that's an option at this time or not.
At this point, I don't think it is. I mean, with 500 people almost have decided to pay the fee, and this is a temporary closure of the weekend hours, and they'll be coming back at some point. But again, that's for the council to discuss, but I don't recommend that at this point.
Hey, Jim, contract. I have just a quick question. What do we, some people have asked me, are we concerned about backups onto Lambert's Mill Road, and how are we going to manage that? And also,
Good.
no, I was going to say, is there an opportunity, it might be too difficult to somehow post wait times just for folks, just because we're asking people to go during the workday?
Yeah, so a couple things. Those have joined up and have purchased permits. We have their information, so we'll be able to message them tomorrow. Know what the plan is. We expect to do that. We will be having the police department there tomorrow, Thursday and Friday to assist DPW. But we also need people to not all show up at 9 o'clock in the morning to get rid of their material. They need to spread themselves out throughout the day if they can on Thursday and Friday. DPW is going to a couple things. We're changing the entire inside of the center to create specific lanes for specific things. So if you come in and you're not looking to dump off organic debris, you're just there for recycling, you don't have to wait in line. You'll be able to get in and get out quickly. If you're waiting for a decal, we're hoping everybody has their information ready to go, not to roll down their window, to show it at the passenger side window so DPW employees have separation from them. It should be a quicker transaction because the payment's already been made. It's just confirming that they have their e-receipt with them and then put the decal on their car. So we're hoping that with everyone's cooperation, it'll be actually a quicker transaction than has been in the past. And we'll be able to get people moving very quickly. But it's going to be a first time we've ever done this. So the police department has been asked to help, which is great. And Greg and Rich Eubanks will be out there all day with the other employees, directing people and kind of pushing people through as fast as possible. So it's going to be a learning experience, but we're going to try to move it as fast as we can.
Okay.
Jim, just real quick, it's Councilman LaGrippo again. Just why can't the center be open longer days during the weekend, like Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday? Like, why the bottleneck on Thursday and Friday? And also, is it possible to keep it open till 4? But why close at 2:30?
Well, again, Thursdays and Fridays are historically have always been our days during the week. And the other days of the week, we actually spend processing the material that is dropped off. That takes a lot of time and effort, obviously, depending on how much material gets dropped off. And also carting it in and out. We're only a transfer station technically. So material gets dropped off, we have to process it or hold it and then transfer it to another site, county, facility, or others. So there's a lot of truck movement during the week, which we need to have. Number two, go beyond the 2:30 timeframe would create overtime, which is what we're trying to avoid right now because of the uncertain budget situation. So we do 2:30 because the guys have the opportunity to close the gates and then get back to the yard to be punched out by 3 o'clock, which is the end of their day. But again, I think in a few weeks we'll have a much better understanding with our own budget and with the state, obviously, grant we get. We should go back to hopefully some normal times and normal hours.
All right, great. So the center won't be open on the weekends until we hear if there's a state grant that we get the money or not.
Either that or the council decides how they're going to fund it separately, obviously, during our budget. So I expect in the next 2 weeks we're going to know that.
Okay. All right, great. Thanks.
And can I just make a comment? Just since we're talking about the Conservation Center, so this is Councilman Contract. I do think it's really important for the whole public to know that no decisions have been made about the hours of the Conservation Center to change them because of this crisis. A lot of misinformation has been spread on social media, and it's factually incorrect. So the Finance Committee, the Public Works Committee will decide what the right hours are for the Conservation Center in light of the budget. But I don't think anybody on the Public Works Committee, sorry, I'm speaking for the committee, wants to see the center not open to the same level it has been. It broke even last year. It's a potential revenue maker for the town. So it really doesn't make any financial sense for us to consider shortening the hours of the Conservation Center, from my perspective. We'll obviously be looking at that, but I just want people to know that no decisions have been made. And unfortunately, a lot of information was spread that would indicate decisions were made. That is not true.
Okay. Yeah, David, we should also look at, in my opinion, reducing the fee to the residents back to last year's rate. But that's obviously, we'll discuss that in finance.
Yeah, that's fine. We could talk about that. I think that, as Jim said, this is a temporary move, and the fee covers the whole year. So I think let's talk about it. But my perspective is let's see how long this temporary period lasts.
One other thing about the fee, just so everyone knows, so there's no miscommunication. The fees that are collected go to offset our processing or processing fees for the organic debris that's collected. They don't go to pay for the employees and so forth. The fees we collect strictly go to processing the organic debris that is collected at the center and transferred. So that's all we're doing. Everything else, we provide amazing free recycling opportunities. Of course, there's some things we can't provide right now during this pandemic, which is on the website, but we have a lot of opportunities there once it opens fully that people can take advantage of. But the fee is strictly to offset our costs for processing the material or transferring out of there. That's all it is.
And just one last Conservation Center point. Unfortunately, Jim, do you want to just talk about waste management and the food waste program?
Sure. The food waste program we started late last year, very successful. They just informed us, I think it was yesterday, that they are suspending their operations due to the very low volumes they have. And so we are, it's upsetting because we're about to open, and that was one of our recycling opportunities, but they're not going to be able to do that until, a number of weeks from now, they'll get back to us. We did tell them that we're opening on Thursday. They said, well, if you get anything, we're just going to throw it in the garbage. We said, well, that's not the point of the program. We want to actually have the organic food waste be processed properly. So that'll be suspended until further notice, but that was Waste Management's decision. And we expect that will start up again, hopefully, the next few weeks.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah, no problem. That's my update, Mayor.
Thank you, Jim. And good evening, everybody. And for those of you out in TV land, I don't know if our Facebook Live is working yet, but for the first time, we're also live streaming things on YouTube. So, and we're going to continue doing that even beyond, hopefully when we get back to our normal council meetings. So there's lots of live options to watch. So, so thank you all for being patient and for participating. But tonight's update's a little lengthy because it replaces my typical update I've been giving every evening. And so I'm just going to do this one live. We report case information about COVID, and just so everybody understands what that process is, the chief, the police chief is the one, as our EOM director, that gets this information. He usually doesn't get it till about 6 or so every evening, and he sends it on to us. And then Jim and I are on a county call every day at noon where we get information where they provide from the governors. There's all kinds of different methods of communication that comes down from federal and state. And then I'm on some frequent conference calls with Congressman Malinowski. So all kinds of sources of data. But as of today, there are 68,824 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in New Jersey. Another 1,702 are under investigation. The county reports 7,265 cases, and today Westfield was reporting 14 more. Our case total is now 146. And for context, and I think this is really interesting, the last time we held a council meeting, 3 weeks ago, there were 3,675 cases in New Jersey versus the almost 69,000 that we have. And there were 16 in Westfield versus the 146 that we have. And just to note, a lot of people ask me about recoveries, and do we start tracking recoveries? And unfortunately, there isn't a real mechanism for doing that. It tends to be self-reported, and the baseline for what a recovery means varies. So we don't have that specifically, but I think I know some people personally who have recovered. So we do know this doesn't include some recoveries. And there's a detailed breakdown of statewide numbers online at the Department of Health COVID-19 dashboard. And just a little update about information that came from the state today. The New Jersey Department of Health has issued a waiver for allowing certain individuals with EMT or paramedic experience whose certifications may have expired in the last 5 years to return to job during this current health crisis. Governor Murphy also, he plans to sign a bill that will allow employees forced to care for family members because of COVID up to 12 weeks of family leave in a 24-month period without losing their jobs. And very importantly, I think the governor will also sign the bill extending the state tax filing deadline for income and corporate tax estimated payments to July 15th, which is consistent with what the federal government has done. So both federal and state tax deadlines are now July 15th. And it also extends the fiscal year of 2020 to September 30th. Just a couple things on the local front. Today, I signed a proclamation honoring the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, which takes place on April 22nd. The Green Team had an amazing number of incredible events planned for this year in particular during Earth Month. But in absence of that, they've done an amazing pivot, and they've shifted to a virtual Earth Month celebration that includes the launch of a video series and this Do It at Home Climate Ribbon Project. I also took the opportunity to sign on to Climate Mayors, which is a bipartisan work of U.S. mayors that are working together to demonstrate leadership on climate change. So the proclamation is going to be posted online. We're going to send it out to the media, but hats off to the Green Team, and maybe David will have you comment on that in a little bit. I also want to bring everyone's attention to Mental Health Awareness Month in May. The Mental Health Council in particular during this crisis has been very much at work. They started this, they were formed last year, and they were very successful in normalizing discussions about mental health, making Westfield a stigma-free community, and ensure that we have easy access to mental health resources. The pandemic, I've been getting tons of calls from people that are looking for resources or volunteering for themselves to be resources. So the Mental Health Council has actually, we have a new link on our Coronavirus Information Center for the Mental Health Council, and with all kinds of resources available. So please check it out and share it with your the council members, with the constituents, and hopefully the public will check it out as well. I also want to give an update to everyone that has donated and supported the We Love Local Fund to benefit our local business community. It's been remarkable to date. The fund has received $202,000 from more than 700 donors. We've already distributed $183,000 to 135 Westfield businesses. In addition to the many Westfield donors, we had great other fundraising efforts. Jay McLaughlin did a fundraiser that raised $600. Westfield resident Joe Mendak, he's been painting these pallets. If anyone's interested, they're pallets with flags or other sentiments on them. $3,500 he's raised for We Love Local. And now we have Westfield High School students that are bringing their generation in the fold, and they have an upcoming Westfield Fortnite tournament that's being held this Friday and Saturday to benefit We Love Local. You can go to the Westfield Fortnite fundraiser page to find out information. And I will say the feedback that we've gotten from the businesses that have received checks in hand already has been overwhelming. And their thanks are as much about the money as it is about the fact that how much our residents and community cares about them. And it is the inspiration they need to really persevere through this crisis and hope to reopen their doors in the way they were previously before this opened. I also want to acknowledge the initiative Feed the Front Lines, who's been by getting donations over $60,000 and buying meals from restaurants to feed healthcare workers. And that's been, the Voice family has done that, and it's been incredible how much that has taken off. I do want to make one comment that is not probably surprisingly that the Memorial Day Parade is going to be postponed to either July or September. We doubt that people are going to be ready for large-scale gatherings on Memorial Day, and we also want to do it at a time when we can really properly honor those that served and paid the ultimate sacrifice. So more information will be available, obviously, at an appropriate time. Shifting to finances a bit, the one question I get repeatedly from both residents and commercial businesses is about the May 1st property tax deadline, which is quickly approaching. We have been waiting for information that comes from the state because the grace period, we currently have a 10-day grace period. That is not something that is that we have control over. That is a period, a deadline that's dictated by the state. So we don't have the authority. And unfortunately, while the state assembly passed a bill for an extension, the Senate declined it after intense lobbying by both the county and school lobbyists. And I think it's important for people to understand, as a municipality, we are the tax collector for all the taxes, of which, as I always repeat, 60% goes to the schools and 24% goes to the county. And by law, they get paid first. So we have to pay our obligations to them in full. So in the event that our tax collections decline, which I think we are anticipating, the municipality is one left holding the bag, and we pretty much get what's remaining to cover all the gaps or opportunities in our budget. So it's incredibly frustrating. I do share, I mean, obviously very concerning. I have been talking to other mayors about, we have a text chain about all the Union County mayors are on the text chain together, and we talk about our options. There is some ideas that are going to come out of the New Jersey League of Municipalities tomorrow. So we'll be sure to communicate anybody. But as of now, there hasn't been any state assistance in extending the grace period beyond May 10th. But hopefully there's some other little few things we can do. I also want to mention the budget. So in anticipation of declining revenues, it should come as no surprise to anyone that, like most municipalities, we are in the process of revisiting our budget as the entire economy continues to process the impact of this pandemic. It's important to note that 45% of our budget is generated by non-property tax revenues, such as parking, construction, courts, all of which are lower than anticipated prior to the pandemic, but now they're at a virtual standstill. And also the timing and certainty of their restoration is also unknown. So it remains unclear what impact that COVID's going to have on property tax collections, but we anticipate it will be. Many more people are unemployed. So as a result, we will be proposing significant and potentially drastic budget cuts based upon reduction in revenue projections. So the Finance Committee is going to be reviewing that budget in the next 10 days. And we will be prepared to share those details with the public at our when the budget is introduced at our next meeting on April 28th. It is not an easy time for any of us, and we're going to do our best to show as much compassion to our residents as we possibly can, as well as to our employees. There's a lot of services that we might have to postpone or kick down the road, but I think it's we're all in uncharted waters here, and so we're going to make the best of it, but it's going to be tough. But I will tell you, this is very revealing, I think, in terms of what it is we're trying to do. And I think the impact of this pandemic, it only reaffirms what I shared at our March 10 council meeting regarding the necessity and urgency of expanding and diversifying our tax base. As you mentioned, we talked about redevelopment back then, and I'm pleased to report that the planning board in its most recent meeting endorsed the town council's redevelopment resolution, and has indeed directed our redevelopment planner to do a study to determine if our 8 municipal parking lots, the Lord & Taylor properties, and the Rialto property all qualify for non-condemnation areas in need of redevelopment. And tonight, as I mentioned back on March 10th, we're actually taking the next step, and that's by voting on a resolution to ask the planning board to seek a study to determine if our entire downtown area within the special qualifies as an area in need of rehabilitation. Just as a reminder, this is a designation that allows for agreements with property owners so that they can get, it's a means to encourage them to improve their properties, and they can get a 5-year tax abatement on the value of their improvements. It's something that when we met with the property owners in early March, they were all very enthusiastic about, and I do think now more than ever, this type of designation is going to be more important, not only to ensure that our downtown survives, but hopefully will thrive after we emerge from the other side of this pandemic. So just in closing, this experience from my seat has been incredibly, it's been a real window into the soul of our community. I have to say, both I've seen it personally, I've seen through emails, and it's not something that I ever could anticipated. And I just want to thank everybody for their patience, for their encouragement. I've gotten the most thoughtful and amazing and compassionate notes since I've been mayor. And, I think the comment that most people like to say to me, boy, this is not what you signed up for. But you know what? No, I didn't sign up for this, but neither did the teachers that are having to learn to teach their kids remotely. Neither did the grocery store workers that literally are on the front lines of this, putting their health in danger and earning minimum wage. Neither did the mailmen. Neither did the guys that are picking up our garbage. None of us signed up for this. But it's really all about a lesson in resilience, and it's about it's how we handle the cards that we're dealt. And I think I certainly feel as mayor at this time, and I would assume our council members feel the same way. I mean, we all have to set an example for optimism and resilience, and it really is how we respond to this crisis that's going to be the legacy. I really believe our Westfield 300 legacy. So I just want to thank everybody for their support and patience and understanding. And I don't know if people appreciate how unique Westfield is. And I hear it from other mayors that call me. I hear it from people that have seen the things that have been written about. Not every community responds the way we have in terms of neighbors helping neighbors, people raising money, helping our businesses. It is really unique to our community. And I think when we come out of this, people might appreciate how special it is, because it's certainly a privilege for me to sit here and be a witness to that. So thank you to everybody, to all of the council and to the community for their support. So anyway, it's not easy for any of us, but we are definitely making the best of it. So I'd say, I ask everybody to keep the suggestions coming. I read every single thing that comes to me. I try to respond immediately. And I really love all the good news initiatives that people like. People send me pictures of things they've seen on their walks. It's just great. And it's incredible motivation for me and for everybody else. So thank you. We are all better together apart. So with that, we'll move on.
Mayor, this is Councilman Agrippo. Real quick, on the May 1st taxes, I believe the town has the ability to waive the interest on the 10-day grace period. So I just want to see if that's been discussed at all.
So those are some of the things we're considering. And there's some issues, there's some statutory things. Yeah, there's some statutory things. That's where I was talking to the League of Municipalities today about things we can do and our length of time. But that's some of the consideration we have.
Okay. And the other question I've been getting is if there's going to be any consideration for the commuters that use the commuter lot, as far as being reimbursed a month or two that they're not using the lot, but something we could discuss.
Yeah, well, I think what's unique about that is we didn't technically, those aren't closed, right? I mean, if people needed to use them, they could. So I would argue that maybe potentially employers should be reimbursing them for parking that they paid for that no longer needed. But I think that one would be a very difficult one, quite candidly.
Yeah, okay. Because I know a lot of the insurance companies, car companies, are reimbursing drivers. Like, I got a credit from Allstate. So.
I'm thinking that could be an employer-driven thing, right? Because they're the ones that chose to close, and they need to cover the expense. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Hey, Mayor, can I just mention one thing, just in piggybacking on the generosity of our community? We've heard from a number of other towns just about Lifelong Westfield. I don't know if the whole public's aware, but folks on the Lifelong Westfield Advisory Committee are calling all of the seniors on our list. And I have heard just nothing but unbelievable thanks from the seniors, who appreciate somebody just calling to check in on them. I also think it's important to thank the police department, the St. Helens Food Pantry. They're actually going grocery shopping for seniors and delivering groceries, so to keep seniors out of harm's way. And again, I think it does speak to the specialness of our community that people are calling every week, 15, 20 people to check in on them. And I've heard personally from a couple who really, really appreciate it.
I think I sent you the note I got from a friend of mine. Her mother got a call, and it was so overly nice and generous, she thought it couldn't have been real.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
she daughter sent me a note saying, wow, if this is really what this done, they're amazing. So it's great. Okay, so on to the agenda. So Mrs. Rowley, do we have any advertised hearings?
Yes, Mayor, there's one advertised hearing for General Ordinance number 2169, an ordinance amending and supplementing the code of the town of Westfield regarding road openings and street paving. So anyone wishing to be heard on General Ordinance number 2169 can make your comment now. Be sure to include your name and address for the record. And again, these are comments for General Ordinance 2169. Nothing, Jim?
Unmute, Jim. You have to ask them to raise their hand.
Yeah, so if anyone has any comments now about this ordinance, they're more than happy to virtually raise your hand and on your attendee list, and we can unmute you and you can give input if you want to. So we have 45 people that are attending the meeting as attendees.
I don't see anybody.
No, there's nobody. Nobody wants to make comment on this ordinance. Okay.
All right, seeing no one, Mayor may close the hearing.
This hearing is closed. Councilman Mackey, please move for the adoption of General Ordinance number 2169.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to move for the adoption of General Ordinance number 269 on second reading, and ordinance amending and supplementing the code of the town of Westfield regarding road openings and street paving.
It's underwater.
May I have a second?
Second.
And
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Councilwoman Habgood,
yes.
Councilman Parmalee,
Yes.
Councilman LaGrippo,
Yes.
Councilman Katz,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mackey,
I'm still there.
Is she there?
Yes.
Frozen.
Councilman
You said
Contract,
Yes.
Councilman Dardia,
Yes.
Councilman Boyce,
Yes.
Mayor Brindle.
Yes.
Yes.
This motion is carried.
Yes.
Okay.
Got it.
May I have a motion to approve the minutes for the Town Council conference session and regular meeting of March 24, 2020?
So
So
moved.
moved.
That was moved by Councilman LaGrippo. Second?
Second.
Please say your name, whoever said. Was that Michael Dardia?
Yep.
Yes,
Micah.
second by Councilman Dardia. And all in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Aye.
Opposed? This motion is carried. Mrs. Rowley, do we have any petitions or communications?
No, Mayor.
So now it's time for open discussion by citizens. Please request to make your comment now on any subject on which we have jurisdiction, and be sure to state your name and address for the record. And I think they have to raise their hand, right, Jim? Virtually?
Yes, that's correct.
So raise your hand virtually.
See if you have anybody. We have somebody here.
Good.
My goodness. Hey, Mike, I see two hands up. I can't seem to get them to open it. You could do that.
Good evening, Mayor.
Yes.
Yep,
Mayor, it's Greg Casco, 434 Everson Place. How are you tonight?
good, thanks, Greg.
I don't want to minimize the issues that this town council is facing under the circumstances. However, I did have a question or two about the Conservation Center on Lamberts Mill Road. Specifically, as an essential employee, I'm required to work, and I leave my house at 6 a.m. and I return usually around 4 p.m. And unfortunately, a Thursday or Friday does not fit into the schedule for me to dump leaves. I have not bought a permit yet because unfortunately I cannot use the conservation center under those hours. And I was wondering if shifting the hours of some DPW workers to cover at least one day on the weekend, maybe every 2 weeks. Also, are we still accepting out-of-town contractors dumping at the conservation center? And if so, could those costs be raised to offset hiring our guys to work one weekend or one day on each weekend? I've gone to mulching my front and back lawn because I have a mulching mower now. However, there's other debris such as leaves, spring cleanup debris. I'm burning my sticks and twigs and branches that fall from the trees in my fire pit, so I'm getting away with that for now. But like my neighbors, there are people that just cannot get to the center during those hours that you guys have so graciously opened up to the public. And I think a lot of people that do not have landscapers are going to have an issue getting to the conservation center between the hours that it's now open, which I believe is until 2:30 on Thursdays and Fridays.
Can we respond, David?
Greg, hey, can you guys hear me? I understand your point, and it's something that I actually would like to see happen, but I understand why the town decided, based off of Jim's explanation earlier, that they weren't able to. I do think that it's something I'll continue to advocate for because I agree with you. I'll have my own issues with work getting there. I think, my hope is that we'll look at the budget in the very near future and we'll be able to feel comfortable adding some time on a weekend to accommodate residents like yourself as well as others. I am working as hard as I can to make that happen, but we have to work within the constraints of the crisis. But that's my commitment to the residents. I'd like to see it happen.
One other question I have, and if it's possible, perhaps the DPW superintendent could weigh in. You do have leaf pickup at the curb during leaf pickup season, leaves that are bagged. Would it be possible if we were to bag debris that they could come by on regular working hours and transport that debris down to the conservation center in lieu of? In other words, I could bag it on a weekend, leave it out on a Monday or Tuesday, or call to make an appointment, and then have them pick that up. Has that been considered?
So I think there's been some informal discussion about that. I think the feeling is that would be costly as well as be challenging given the staffing. The DPW is working on split shifts now for social distancing purposes. And it's something that definitely, as we get into the budget, there's a commitment on my part, sitting on the Finance Committee and the Public Works Committee, to find a better solution. So that's my commitment. I don't have the answer tonight, but I promise. I don't want to say I promise. I hope in the next 2 weeks that we'll be able to come up with something that works for people like yourself.
That's fine. Listen, thank you very much for answering my questions, and I really appreciate the work you guys are doing during this crisis. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
Let's see anybody else. Liz Mulholland. Liz?
Liz, you're on mute.
I believe she's muted.
Sorry about that. I'm not a tech whiz. So I wanted to start by saying thank you to all of you. You've really taken this very tragic situation that we're all kind of dealing with and really made it positive. And this community is amazing. Everybody is there to help everybody. So I wanted to thank everybody. I'm also wanted to just clarify, because one of the things that is very confusing is missed messages that are passed on through elected officials. And recently, it was posted online by Mr. LaGrippo that there was no money in the budget to keep the conservation center open on the weekends, that we didn't have money for it. And when all this was over, and over the summer, there would be no weekends because there's no money left in the budget. And I just ask that for the sake of everybody, that we all stay on the same page. I think, Mr. Gilday, you have confirmed that that wasn't discussed at this point, and we are going to move forward and have that discussion. Not we, you are going to move forward and have that discussion. I just ask that we keep that on the same page so there's not a lot of confusion going around. So again, I just wanted to thank you all very much for that. And
Hey, Liz, it's Councilman LaGrippo. Thank you for proposing that question. I don't know if you want to, in the beginning of the meeting where Jim did state the Conservation Center won't be open, and we're waiting to hear from the state as far as the weekend hours. So I hope that clarifies the matter for you.
right, I just, it's the difference between saying it's not going to be open, then we're going to have the discussion. So I just appreciate that, we be careful about that so that things don't get, there's a lot of miscommunication.
Yeah, I mean, the budget was discussed previously. So, I mean, if you want to know, previously we were looking at a 2.9%.
Mark, I'm going to interrupt because you and I actually specifically had a conversation this afternoon about the fact that there isn't anything public yet about the budget. The budget hasn't been presented, and the budget's going through a big overhaul. And as you and I talked about this afternoon, this is a very stressful time for people. So there's absolutely no reason to be talking about what the tax rate might be. We're doing everything in our power.
I'm just saying private.
You are trying to say things. You're actually trying to repeat things that we talked about today that are not public information. And there have been no decisions about the budget. We had to end our conversations about the budget because it's not going to be presented to the public until 2 weeks from today.
Right, but I'm being transparent in the sense that's what it was prior, and it is going to change. And that's
actually, it wasn't. There wasn't even a prior discussion about it, Mark. We never had the meeting to present the budget in the first place. Councilman, you know that.
Well, we came up with 2.9% and a $7.5 million, and we're waiting. So that was, to be fully transparent, that's where we're at, and things are going to change. But
okay,
that's where we're at.
I'm going to ask.
It's fine if you don't want to be transparent.
That's not about transparency. That's about spreading false information to the public. And it's wrong for you to be repeating things that are not.
Why is it what this?
Never going
why
to
is what discussed?
That we're going to
why is what discussed in committee?
Time out.
Okay.
Mark, let me just jump in here a sec. I think there's a difference between transparency and keeping things confidential. What we talk about in the finance committee that's non-public stays non-public until it becomes public at a public presentation. That never happened, Mark, you knew that. So when I saw that you posted about the tax increase, I immediately called Linda because you shouldn't be doing that. It's not public information. It hasn't been released to the public. We all took an oath of trust amongst each other that what we talk about in our finance committee stays in the finance committee till it gets presented to the council. So on the call tonight,
David,
Mark,
your interpretation of
it's
it.
not my
No,
interpretation,
actually,
Mark. That's what confidential discussions are about. You've been on the council a lot longer than I. If anybody should know this, you should know this.
Can I ask a question? Can I ask one question? Tom Jardine, I believe you're the town attorney. Can you please discuss with me the definition of executive session and what that means when it comes to?
Wait. This was not discussed in executive session. Two totally different things.
Committee, so it's a little different, but I think Mark, Councilman LaGrippo knows that what we talk about in the finance committee, the decisions we make and the recommendations we make are only public when they're presented to the council. They're not public until they are presented to the council. Mark, you know that. You've been on the finance committee before. I know you want the information out there where we net it out, but it wasn't public. And that's, I'm sure, what Councilwoman Havid shared with you. And I fully support her because it's not the proper thing to do. It's just not.
Okay, well, that's your feeling, but let's move on.
Well, thank you very much. It's this kind of confusion. I mean, I think it's better that when the town agrees and votes on something, that's when it's legal, instead of having all of this behind the scenes questioning that goes on that spreads rumors. So I just ask that you all, when something's approved, then that's what the town voted on. No council member on his own or her own can make any decision. So I just ask that the council in general, please stick by that and wait until you vote on something so that the public doesn't get confused on what is a law and what is not. So I just want to thank you so much. I really appreciate everything you're doing. You're all doing a great job. So thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? No, nobody else, Mayor.
Mayor, you're on mute.
Well, I'll just make one comment on this before I close that out. And because, you know, I don't want anyone to walk away trying to think that there's anything that is not being properly and vetted with the public. I think, to me, what the issue is in time, at all times, but certainly in times of stress, what people want from their leaders is the truth and facts. And they also want to know that that their leaders are all working together for a common cause. And I think probably what just transpired is not so much about what was communicated, what wasn't. It's as if that we are not all on the same page, and quite frankly, that there's information put out there to intentionally stir the pot and dissension. And this is no time for that. And I think what you hear from Councilwoman Hapgood and from Contract, who are chair and vice chair of the Finance Committee, is the fact that information is being distributed to the public without proper context and intentionally to undermine kind of a good faith in what's trying to be accomplished. And I honestly, as I go through this, that's something that I don't really have any patience for, and I don't think the public has any patience for. So it's not about what the public should or shouldn't know. It's about what they should know in the proper context behind it as a means to get to the truth. And so I think what was or wasn't decided is irrelevant, because we're all going to be rowing in the same direction, and we're all going to be working towards a budget that works for all going forward. So I appreciate the comments from Ms. Mulholland. I agree there should be no room for anybody trying to sow dissension or trying to use it as an opportunity for political gain or to score political points. I think the public is smart enough to see that, and there's no room for it on this council. And I think we will, we're all going to be working together towards something that's going to be a compassionate and good outcome for all. So with that, do we have any more comments, Jim?
No.
No. All right. With that, I will close this portion of the meeting, and we'll move to bills. So, Councilwoman Hapgood.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move bills and claims in the amount of $1,470,309.99.
May I have a second?
Second.
Councilman Grippo.
By Councilman Contract. Any discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Aye.
Opposed? This motion is carried. Next on the agenda is reports of standing committees, beginning with the Finance Policy Committee. Councilwoman Hapgood.
Thank you, Mayor. I have 5 resolutions for which I'd like to move as a package. But first, I'd like to just talk again a little bit about the schedule related to the budget, since there probably is some confusion around the questions asked tonight. The budget is being re-looked at in light of the impacts that the COVID-19 pandemic have had on a lot of town operations. And so we're looking very carefully at trying to reduce the budget as much as possible and try to relieve as much pressure on the residents as we possibly can. That budget is going to be discussed with as much information as we have today, which is not going to be everything that we will ultimately know about COVID-19, but we'll work. Jim and Scott Olson, our CFO, have been already working hard. Councilman Contract and I have had a number of discussions to re-look at budgets that we've been talking about over the last few months. And we're making every effort to make these things work. And I want the residents of town to know that. And also emphasize what the mayor has said about how often we've talked about working as a team on the finance committee. That the budget for 2020 will be presented to the public. We're not sure exactly in what way we will do it, since obviously in 2 weeks' time we'll still be having remote presentation of this meeting generally, but that will happen on April 28th with the presentation, and then the budget needs to be ratified by May 26th, a month later. So back to the resolutions. I have a resolution authorizing the CFO to refund the recreation department fees. I have a resolution authorizing the CFO to draw a warrant for dog licenses for March 2020. The third resolution authorizing the CFO to draw a warrant to the Treasurer, State of New Jersey, for marriage civil union license fees, and a resolution authorizing the CFO to draw a check for the balance of escrow monies.
May I have a second?
Second, Mike Dahl.
Thank you.
Seconded by Councilman Dardia. Any discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
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 Opposed? This motion is carried.
And then lastly, I'd like to move a resolution to approve temporary emergency appropriations.
May I have a second?
Second, Boyce.
Second by Councilman Boyce. Any discussion?
Mayor, just to remind the council what this is again. I know it says temporary emergency appropriation. This is again just another amendment of our temporary budget to hold us over till we have an actual budget. So this is the second time we've done this, but it's called temporary emergency appropriation by the state rules. But that has done the analysis to give us what we need for another few weeks until we have a budget introduced and adopted.
Great. Please call the roll.
Councilwoman Hapgood,
Yes.
Councilman Parmalee,
Yes.
Councilman LaGrippo,
Yes.
Councilman Katz,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mackey,
Yes.
Councilman Contract,
Yes.
Councilman Dardia,
Yes.
Councilman Boyce,
Yes.
Mayor Brindle.
Yes, this motion is carried. So next is the Code Review and Town Property Committee. So Councilman Mackey.
So Councilman Mackey, you're on mute. I wanted to say, I invited Sam tonight, just in case anyone had any questions about this. The mayor did a great job of explaining this in her opening remarks, but in case any questions, Don and Chris, I wanted to thank them. If you saw in your package, it's also posted online. This pandemic timeframe gave us a little bit of an opportunity. Don and Chris were able to focus on doing this report. If you haven't had a look at it, it's very well done. This is not an easy report to do, and Chris and Don did a really great job to review these properties and do a nice report that now this action tonight the council will take is merely referring this over to the planning board for their analysis, and then it'll come back to the council for adoption. But if you want Don to say a few words about it, if you have any details, Don, you want to talk about, you're on mute, Don.
Got it. Hi, everybody. So as a planner, I'm very happy to see you continue with your use of the local redevelopment and housing law. I mean, there are tremendous advantages to doing so. You talked about some of this with the redevelopment properties you've gone through so far with those properties on South Avenue, and most recently with looking at the Lord and Taylor properties, the Rialto, and the municipal parking lots. But what's before you this evening is a resolution which refers over a different resolution, which would delineate the special improvement district also as what's called an area in need of rehabilitation. An area in need of rehabilitation is different from an area in need of redevelopment. And again, what you've done so far is look at areas in need of redevelopment. The only difference between the two when it comes to the law in general is that with a rehabilitation area delineation, you cannot take property by eminent domain. There's no power of condemnation. And also you cannot grant long-term tax abatements or what are commonly referred to as pilots. However, with rehabilitation designation, you do have the ability to use the short-term tax abatement statute and grant 5-year tax exemptions and abatements through adoption of the separate ordinance, which if you continue on this path of rehabilitation, we would present to you an ordinance for those short-term tax advantages. And as the mayor mentioned earlier, she discussed this during a group of downtown property owners, and they are all very receptive and saw the benefits and helping them to improve their properties with this special tax incentive. So the process for you now, again, you're referring over a resolution to the planning board for their review and comment, but the designation of the rehabilitation area is much simpler than the redevelopment area designation. There's no special report for the planning board to do. There's no special public hearing that the planning board has to have. With the redevelopment designation, planning board has to put out notice on 2 consecutive weeks and by certified mail and hold an open public hearing. With this process, the rehabilitation process, the planning board is simply reviewing your resolution, you're referring to them in sort of a work session kind of a deal. There's no public hearing required. It's reviewed simply at a public meeting. The criteria used to determine a rehabilitation area is also different from a redevelopment area, and that criteria is explained in the report that Chris and I prepared. And basically the criteria we found that the special meets is that the water and sewer infrastructure is in need of repair and substantial maintenance and repair. I forget the exact terminology, but Chris and I, we have an opinion that the special improvement district area does meet the criteria to be declared a rehabilitation area. We're hoping you concur and move forward with this following the statutory processes so we can get a rehabilitation area designation for what is now our special improvement district.
And Dawn, can you just talk about, this is fairly common in downtowns in lots of different places, correct?
It is fairly common. In my time in Montclair, we used rehabilitation. In Asbury Park, we used rehabilitation. Some communities, even the entire municipality is delineated as an area in need of rehabilitation. South Orange being the most recent example that I've heard of.
Metuchen too.
Metuchen, yeah.
Metuchen too.
Metuchen as well, yeah. So it's very common. I mean, the redevelopment law is a great tool for municipalities to use. It gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of tax incentives if you so choose. The redevelopment plan gets you specific design standards and development guidelines for specific pieces of property. I mean, as a planner, I love using the redevelopment and housing law. I think it's a great tool for every town in New Jersey, quite frankly.
Great, thank you so much. So, Councilman Mackey?
I would like to move a resolution referring a rehabilitation area study and resolution for review.
May I have a second?
Second.
Councilman Contract.
Second by Councilman Contract. Any discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Opposed? This motion is carried. So, okay, last is the Public Works Committee, Councilman Contract.
Sure, Mayor. I'd like to move a resolution appointing a member to the Rahway Valley Sewerage Authority for a term ending February 1st, 2025.
May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Grippo. Any discussion? All in favor? Yeah, Jim?
I just want to say, again, you saw my email. I know former mayor and town attorney, Tom, knows Ed Gacco very well, but Ed Gacco is a Westfield resident, former town engineer, former town administrator, former engineering consultant. He's excited to volunteer his time for us, and I know that the Finance Committee has discussed, possibly a sewer utility, which he has helped other communities create. So he might be a great choice for us for some years to not only serve on our behalf on RBSA, but also to assist us in helping other things in a volunteer status. So he's very excited. So.
And I spoke to him today.
Oh, good.
And the idea of being able to evolve to a more consumption-based fee is something that we would aspire to do. So.
Jim, it's Mark, Councilor Grippo. Do we have anyone attending the RVSA meetings? I know Mr. Rothfelder left, I believe, in November, December. So do we have any representation from Westfield at these meetings with the regarding the sewer fee?
So the former representative Marty Rothfelder, by the way, served very well. He only left at the end of January. He served till the very end of his term, which is February 1st. Because of this pandemic, they've actually had some of their meetings canceled. So I think we missed one meeting at the RVSA.
Oh, okay, good.
And I'll pick that up right away.
Good, thanks.
Okay, so did we second this already? We have a second? Or did we second it already? We did. Did we second it already? Okay, all in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Opposed? This motion is carried. Okay, so and I think that wraps up our first official Zoom council meeting. May I have a motion to adjourn? And
Mayor, can I say one thing? Just want to everybody on the council for the report. And again, Police Chief Badaloro, Chris and Don on the call with us, with Tara, of course, but also Megan, who's not here, her staff, the fire department, DPW is not here, all the employees of the town that are coming in on, staggered shifts, processing mail, responding to emails, and just really, everyone's trying to get through the crisis. You said very eloquently before, Mayor, the residents of this town are responding very well. The employees of the town, the elected officials of the town. It's we're very fortunate in the end. I've had a lot of administrators contacting me, asking me, how do we do these things? How do we create the I Love Local, We Love Local campaign? How can I get a United Fund? We are being looked at as an example and a model around the state for many, many things. So I want to thank you all for that. So,
and I have to give a special shout out to Kim Ford, because all those updates that the community is just raving about are really all done by her. And
that's right. I forgot to mention her, because I talk to her every day like you do. Yeah, she's been a workman behind the scenes, so she's done a great job.
Unbelievable. So we're really incredibly fortunate to have that role and her in particular filling it. So anyway. All right. So with that, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Contract. Second.
Second, LaGrifo.
Second by Councilman Mack. Opposed. This motion is carried and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Hey, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
All right,
Hey, guys. Thank you, Mayor.
Bye.